But let's really get into Cold Storage 2026 because this one ended up being way more fun than I expected. Going in, my expectations were pretty low, which honestly sucked because the trailers made it look like an absolute blast. The concept was wild, the tone looked chaotic in a fun way, and of course it stars Joe Keery. And I love Joe Keery, that's my guy. Steve Harrington from Stranger Things will forever have my support, so naturally I wanted this movie to be good. But then the early reactions started coming in, mixed to negative reviews from critics I usually trust. Friends who saw it early told me it was fine or kind of forgettable. Once that kind of reception builds, it definitely lowers your hype. By the time I actually sat down to watch it, I wasn't expecting much more than a mildly entertaining creature flick. And then I walked out thinking, that was a great time. Now let's be clear, this is not some genre redefining masterpiece. It's not reinventing zombie or creature horror, it's not aiming for a word. But if you're looking for a fun, chaotic sci-fi horror comedy that doesn't take itself too seriously, this absolutely delivers. This is a straight-up popcorn movie, and I mean that in the best way possible. The tone is probably its biggest strength. It blends sci-fi, horror, and comedy in a way that feels very intentional. The movie knows exactly what it is. It's not trying to be emotionally devastating nor deeply philosophical. It's here to entertain you with fungus-infected chaos, gross-out effects, and ridiculous exhalation, and it commits to that energy fully. The balance of gore and humor works really well. There are splatter moments and some genuinely nasty visuals that horror fans will appreciate, but they're paired with light-hearted banter and comedic beats keep the vibe fun rather than oppressive. It's very much in that horror comedy sweet spot. You cringe, then you laugh, then something explodes, then someone drops a one-liner. It keeps things moving. Joe Keery and Georgina Campbell are honestly the glue holding it together. Their chemistry is strong and the mentor feels natural rather than forced. Keery brings out awkward charm and slightly panic charisma that made him so lovable in Stranger Things, and it works perfectly here. He sells both the comedic timing and the more intense moments. Campbell is equally solid, giving the movie a grounded presence that balances out the absurdity. Even when the situation gets ridiculous, you stay invested because you actually like spending time with these characters. And surprisingly, the characters feel more developed than in your average creature feature. Usually in movies like this, you're just waiting to see who gets taken out next. But here there's enough personality in the interaction that you're actually rooting for them. That extra bit of character work goes a long way. I also really appreciated the throwback vibe. The whole thing feels like an homage to older creature features like Tremors or Evolution. Those slightly campy, personality-filled sci-fi horror movies that embrace their weirdness. It has that nostalgic B-movie with confidence tone. It doesn't feel cynical or corporate. It feels like people actually had fun making it. The humor lends consistently too. There are plenty of goofy one-liners, absurd setups, and some genuinely laugh-out-loud moments. My theater had multiple big reactions. The movie doesn't go too long without either a joke or some kind of outrageous escalation. That pacing keeps the energy high. Speaking of pacing, the runtime is a huge plus. At around 1 hour and 39 minutes, it absolutely flies by. There's very little drag. It doesn't overcomplicate the story. It sets up the threat, throws the characters into chaos, and keeps building from there. That tight runtime makes it incredibly easy to rewatch. This is the kind of movie you throw on with friends on a weekend night and just have a good time. The effects are also worth mentioning. I love the mix of practical and digital work. The fungus outbreak visuals are creatively gross, slimy, invasive, and over the top in exactly the way you'd want. It doesn't feel lazy, it feels like they had fun designing the chaos. There's something very satisfying about watching imaginative creature effects done with enthusiasm. Now, it's definitely not flawless. The biggest issue is that it doesn't stand out much within the genre. As much fun as it is, it does feel familiar. The structure follows pretty recognizable creature feature tropes. You can see certain plot beats coming from a mile away. There aren't many big surprises in the story, and while the comedy works, the horror side doesn't generate a lot of real tension. I wasn't generally scared at any point. The stakes feel entertaining rather than intense. If you're going in expecting serious dread or edge of your seat suspense, you might be disappointed. It also doesn't innovate much thematically. It plays in a sandbox we've seen before and doesn't necessarily bring a bold new angle. But I see I don't really mind. Not every movie needs to reinvent the wheel. Sometimes you just want the wheel to spin really fast and be fun while it does. So overall, I had an absolute blast with Cold Storage. It's energetic, gross in a creative way, consistently funny and anchored by charming performances, especially from Joe Keery. It may not become a genre classic, but it absolutely succeeds as a fun night at the movies. Final grade, B+.
That's what I'm talking about, Shadows! You know I love that shit!
What did you all think of Cold Storage? Were you surprised like I was, or did it not quite work for you? Let me know. Goodbye!